Thank you, Kathy. That was nice. It's hard to believe that it was almost 5 months ago to the day that we got the word that things would start shutting down, including the church, even though we never really shut down. And I don't know about you, but it's easy during times like this to lose that inner joy and spontaneity and free-flowing spirit that makes us who we are. It's like we lose a little bit of ourselves during this time. And maybe the hardest thing is just the freedom to be, the freedom to shake somebody's hand and to give somebody a hug and to see another person smile. It's kind of funny, I like to see people smile. So I guess now you have to smile with your eyes. Just going to the park with your grandkids or going to the church at the last minute, taking your kids to grandma's to visit her in the nursing home. All that stuff that you could just do spur of the moment. Now you either can't do it or you got to think about it or do it different. Also, I'm not used to being afraid. And I am afraid. I'm afraid of getting sick. I don't want to get sick. You know, there's stuff to do. But nobody's immune to any of this stuff. And I don't want the people that I love to get sick. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't like living not knowing what tomorrow and the next week are going to bring. But we have to have the courage and the patience to be that way. The lesson for today is about being afraid. You know, the disciples are in the boat, and that's just kind of symbolic. The disciples are in their world. It's stormy, it's windy like it is around, and they're afraid. And then Jesus is walking on the water, and the water is a symbol of the uncertainty of life. And Jesus says, wait a minute, have courage. Don't be afraid, because I'm here. And Peter's excited, and he gets on the water, starts to walk, and then he sees the wind, and he starts to sink. And then Jesus has to reach down and pull him up. And Peter is like you and me sometimes. You know, we get afraid, and we start to sink. And we need somebody like Jesus or a good friend or just somebody who loves us to pull us up and help us not to worry about being afraid. I don't want to sink. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being afraid. I want to live my days with boldness and confidence and a spirit of courage. And I'll be honest, I do not know what I would do without you. Without my family, my church, my friends, my faith, the good Lord who died and rose for us. And I also don't want to lose sight of the miracles around me. Those little moments and those little things that remind us of the goodness of life. I want to be able to walk on the waters of uncertainty and not let that uncertainty define who I am. You know, we don't need to be afraid of being afraid. It's okay. We don't have to be strong and do it by ourselves. Speaking of being afraid, I was thinking of Pat and Kurt Martin today. You know, she's so scared because he had a major heart attack yesterday. He's in an intensive care at Payless, and she right now can't even go see him. They said, you've just got to stay away, and so she has to call back and forth. But I told Pat this morning, I said, that's why we're here. You know, it took her courage to come to church today. And I said, we're here to hold you up. And when you feel yourself sinking a little bit, you know, the good Lord is going to grab you, and we'll grab you too and get you there. And I think the same thing about Larice with Craig. You know, my gosh, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so when you go back and forth and feel a little bit weak, and if you feel like you're sinking a little bit, we're here to hold you up and to pull you up. That's what life is about. It's ironic, you know, in this pandemic thing, we're kind of forced to be apart. We're forced to love each other from a distance. And I was thinking of Pat. You know, her husband's over here and she's over here, and they can't come together. But from a distance, he's got to know that we're praying for him. I think of Peggy. You know, her dad died last week, and he was hundreds of miles away in Florida. And from a distance, he had to know that she loves him and he loves her, and that from a distance, God's Spirit is there. And yet I feel even though we're forced to be apart, I feel that over the last 5 months or so, spiritually, we've come together more than ever. Because faith and courage is not about necessarily being side by side. It's about knowing that your spirit and my spirit and our spirits are joined together. And that's got to give us strength. I just think of the Flowers today. For example, their son-in-law, Matt. He's not around here, but he's here. His spirit is in this room. I think of Bill Colgan in Hawaii. I mean, I've probably seen Bill over the years 5 times. And yet he does not know what he would do without his church over here near Chicago. So from a distance, Bill Colgan is a part of us. And then the Eternal Light, Mary Ann's dad, his picture was on there during the prelude. He died 32 years ago. And yet from a distance, he's here. He's a part of who we are. Maybe each one of you could take a moment and think about somebody in your life who is far away, and yet from a distance, that person gives you strength and courage. This morning, I'm thinking of my brother Jim. My brother Jim lives in Virginia, and I don't see my brother very often. And yet my brother Jim, who's a retired music therapist and just a gentle giant, he's at the very heart and soul of who I am as a human being. And you know our son Quentin and about his love of people that wear a uniform. I mean, he loves cops. He loves firefighters. He loves people in the military and veterans. And here's a kid that cannot add 1 + 1. And yet somehow he's got these little radios and stuff, and he's able to program them, and he gets messages from different places. And so in his spare time, his whole life is spare time, you know, he's communicating with these different police departments and stuff like that, and they send him patches in the mail. I mean, he got a patch from the Las Vegas Police Department, and he's so proud of it. I was telling my brother Jim about Quentin, and Quentin and Jim just love each other, even though they don't see each other. And so the other day, an envelope comes in the mail, and Q opens it, and it's got 4 patches from police departments where my brother Jim lives in Virginia. And if you could just see, you know, Q's not that emotional, but the look in his eyes and the smile on his face, I mean, that's the way he looks at me when I tell him to clean his room. You know, it's just it's a beautiful thing. And I thought, what a kind and loving act from a distance to let him know that there's a guy on the East Coast that loves him and cherishes him. And it made me realize that there's no mask and no virus that can take away the power of kindness. Kindness has such power and heals us and brings us together. Speaking of little things, one of you who's not here but out there, a while back, you came by our house and brought us a little plant. It's in a little plastic thing about this big. It's just a real small plant. And it had a couple little flowers on it. And so we put it on our back porch, and I would water it every day. And it had those 2 little flowers on it. In fact, I watered the thing to death. And eventually, the little flowers kind of broke off. And then we had to cut the stems. And to me, I looked at that flower every single day. And to me, it was a symbol of life. Because I want to be watered. I want to water it so much because I want to stay strong. But sometimes you just get weak and you droop and you kind of die. And then a few days ago, I noticed a few buds on the branch that we cut. And I said, wow, there's hope. And then this morning I went out. Look at this baby. That is Jesus smiling at the world. And I thought to myself, my gosh, there is hope. It's a little miracle. It's a little thing, but it just kind of gave me goosebumps. Because to survive the stuff that we're going through, it's little moments that remind us that there is hope and there is joy and there's a power at work out there somehow, some way. You know, we need a big miracle now. We need a big miracle so we can kind of get back to the way life should be. But in the meantime, the little miracles is really all we have. And yet those little miracles can do big things to keep us strong. So to Kurt And to Craig, from a distance, I hope they know how much they are loved. And together, in this little place, we're praying for a miracle. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed.